Isn't it wonderful? Have you ever been somewhere so grand? Oh, yes. The city and the station are simply darling. But I was referring to the train, dear. Isn't it beautiful? You've been aboard before? How exciting! I've never travelled in such style before. I don't quite know what to think. I can't quite believe it. I put on my newest gown and I even bought myself a new purse for the occasion. Here it is. I wanted to treat myself, you know. I love it though. I think it will go with all kinds of outfits. Have you just boarded or have you been to your room yet? Oh, you have? How do they look? Wonderful. I haven't been to mine yet. I jumped on the train and I came straight to the dining car because I'd heard it was the most opulent element of the train. Well, that and I just had to try one of these famous pistachio and rose cakes. I simply couldn't wait. Have you had one? They are divine. I can vouch for their deliciousness. They're quite exquisite. You must have one. But listen to me going on. I haven't even introduced myself yet. My name is Isabelle. How do you do? I'm doing very well, thank you. Even better now, I have some wonderful company. Would you like to share some of my wine? Here's a glass for you. There you go. We'll be giggling in no time. Cheers to that. They're such wonderful views, aren't they? I could just sit here all day. How can one feel so far away from home, but so at home in the same breath? Yeah, I could definitely get used to this. Yes, I'm taking this trip to spread my wings a little bit, you know. Explore some new places. See more of the world. I simply had to get away from my little town for a short while. Sure, it has its own unique charm, like anywhere does, but I'm ready for a new adventure, a new beginning. And so I thought, why not treat myself a little bit? I can see more of the world, travel in style, eat some delicious food, mainly cakes, drink the finest of wines, meet new friends. I'm sorry, I'll let you speak for a little while now. What brings you here? Oh my goodness, how exciting. Your 4th time on this trip. So you're quite used to this lifestyle then? Wait. Your 4th time on this trip? And you haven't tried one of those cakes yet? Well, we obviously need to rectify this immediately. You simply must have one of those cakes before you leave this time. I demand it. Promise me. Okay. Such luxurious treats cannot be missed. And you've disembarked at every station before. Heavens, you are well travelled. What sights you must have seen. I hope one day I can do the same. Disembark at every station and see all the sights, explore every little town, every city, discover all the streets, the different architecture each place has to offer. Everywhere's so different, isn't it? Each with its own unique charm. One day at a time, Isabelle. I'm getting ahead of myself. Is this wine making me giddy? It's a little bit chilly, isn't it? Though I'm sure they keep a good temperature in here. I wouldn't expect any less of such a beautiful, beautiful place. But I do feel the chill very easily. So I'm just going to grab my shawl. Okay. Yes, I'm very easily cold. Even the wine doesn't help, though the colour in my cheeks may say otherwise. Oh, you like it? Thank you very much. This is new too. I love the beads. It's not my usual style, but a new beginning, you know. Are you cold too? I only have the one shawl, but I do have my scarf. Of course you can borrow it, that's no problem at all. If it was a problem, I wouldn't have mentioned it now, would I? I'm more than happy to. It's just this one. Nice flowers. Would this be suitable? I think the colours would go lovely with what you're wearing too, as well. It's like it was meant to be. Here you are. Just put that right in your shoulders. Yeah, the colours remind me of autumn and winter time. And it's lovely and soft, I'm sure you will agree. There you are. Now that looks positively darling on you. You know what? You just keep that. Yes, I'm sure. It looks perfect for you. It would be such a shame if you were to part with it now. You're very welcome. Hope it serves you well. It's like it was made for you. Oh, I think all this excitement is going to my head. I'll have to be getting back to my room soon. I'm sorry to be so rude. And look how dark it's getting outside. It must be late. Time flies when you're having fun. You're feeling sleepy too. How about to wind down? We read a story together. Would you like that? I do so love reading aloud. I used to do it a lot for my nieces and nephews, but I rarely get the opportunity now that they're all grown. Would you like me to read one for you? You would? Great. How wonderful. So I did bring a book. In fact, I brought several. It's such a delight to read. I feel something so peaceful and grounding about it. Yet at the same time, exciting. One moment you could be a knight battling fierce dragons. Rescuing damsels in distress. And the next, you could be at a wonderful party hosted by Jay Gatsby. You could be anyone, anywhere, any point in time. In each one of these pages, so many lives are being lived. But tonight, let's say something more light-hearted. This is a book of fairy tales. And this is a silly story. Once upon a time, there was a farmer and his wife who had one daughter, and she was courted by a gentleman. Every evening he used to come home and see her and stop to supper at the farmhouse, and the daughter used to be sent down into the cellar to draw the beer for supper. So one evening she had gone to draw the beer, and she happened to look up at the ceiling while she was drawing. She saw a mallet stuck in one of the beams. It must have been there a long, long time. But somehow or another she had never noticed it before. And she began thinking, and she thought it was very dangerous to have that mallet there. For she said to herself, suppose him and me were to be married, and we were to have a son, and he was to grow up to be a man, and come down into the cellar to draw the beer like I'm doing now, and the mallet was to fall on his head. What a dreadful thing it would be. And she put down the candle in the jug, and she sat herself down and began crying. Well, they began to wonder upstairs how it was that she was so long drawing the beer, and her mother went down to see after her. She found her sitting crying, and the beer running over the floor. Why, whatever is the matter? Said her mother. Oh, mother, look at that horrid mallet. Suppose we were to be married, and I was to have a son, and he was to grow up, and was to come down into the cellar to draw the beer, and the mallet was to fall on his head. What a dreadful thing it would be. Dear, dear, what a dreadful thing it would be, said the mother. And she sat down beside of the daughter and started crying too. Then after a bit, the father began to wonder why they didn't come back, and he went down to the cellar to look himself. And he saw that there were two of them sat there crying. Whatever is the matter? Said he. Why, says the mother, look at that horrid mallet. Just suppose if our daughter and her sweetheart was to be married and was to have a son, and he grew up and came down into the cellar to draw the beer, and the mallet was to fall on his head. What a dreadful thing it would be. Dear, 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 so it would, said the father, and he sat himself down against the other two and started crying. Now the gentleman got tired of stopping up in the kitchen by himself, and at last he went down to the cellar too, to see what they were after. And there they were, all three, sat crying side by side, and the beer running all over the floor. And he ran straight to the tap, and he said, Whatever are you three doing, sitting there crying, and letting the beer run all over the floor? Oh, says the father, look at that horrid mallet. Suppose you and our daughter was to be married, and you was to have a son, and he was to grow up, and was to come down into the cellar and draw the beer, and the mallet was to fall on his head. Then they all started crying worse than before. But the gentleman burst out laughing, and reached up and pulled out the mallet, and then he said, I have travelled many miles, and I never met three such big sillies as you three before. And now I shall start out on my travels again, and when I can find three bigger sillies than you three, then I'll come back and marry your daughter. So he wished them goodbye, and started off on his travels, and left them all crying because the girl had lost her sweetheart. Well, he set out, and he travelled a long way, and at last he came to a woman's cottage that had some grass growing on the roof, and the woman was trying to get her cow to go up the ladder to the grass, and the poor thing didn't want to go. So the gentleman asked the woman what she was doing. Why, look, she said, look at all that beautiful grass. I'm going to get the cow on the roof to eat it. She'll be quite safe, for I shall tie a string around her and pass it down the chimney and tie it to my wrist as I go about the house, so she can't fall off without my knowing it. Oh, you poor silly, said the gentleman. You should cut the grass and throw it down to the cow. But the woman thought it was easier to get the cow up the ladder than to get the grass down. So she pushed and coaxed her and got her up, tied a string around her and passed it down the chimney and fastened it to her own wrist. The gentleman went on his way, but he hadn't gone far when the cow tumbled off the roof, and the weight of the cow tied to her wrist pulled the woman up the chimney, and she got stuck halfway, covered in soot. Well, that was one big silly. And the gentleman went on, and he went to an inn to stop the night. They were so full at the inn that he had to put him in a double-bedded room. Another traveller was to sleep in the other bed. The other man was a very pleasant fellow, and when they got friendly together, in the morning they were both getting up, and the gentleman was surprised to see the other hang his trousers on the knobs of the chest of drawers and run across the room and try to jump into them. He tried over and over again, and he couldn't manage it. The gentleman wondered whatever he was doing it for. At last he stopped and he wiped his face with his handkerchief. "Oh dear," he says, "I do so think trousers are the most awkward kind of clothes that ever were. I can't think who would have invented such things. It takes me the best part of the hour to get into mine every morning. And I get so hot. How do you manage yours?" So the gentleman burst out laughing and showed him how to put them on, and he was very much obliged to him. And he said he would never have thought of doing it that way. So that was another big silly. Then the gentleman went on his travels again, and he came to a village, and outside the village there was a pond, and round the pond was a crowd of people, and they got rakes and brooms and pitchforks, reaching into the pond. And the gentleman asked what was the matter. "Why," they say, "matter enough. The moon's tumbled into the pond, and we can't get her out anyhow." So the gentleman burst out laughing and told them to look up into the sky, and it was only a shadow in the water. But they wouldn't listen to him, and booed him shamefully as he got away as quick as he could. So there were a whole lot of sillies bigger than them 3 sillies at home. So the gentleman returned back home again and married the farmer's daughter, and they lived happily ever after with their silly lives. I thought that was a nice little story before bed. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. It makes me sad to say goodnight. How about we say the same time tomorrow? Wonderful. I would really like that. And don't worry, I will have the cakes ordered for when you get here. See you tomorrow. Good night.